Hey guys, it's the Middle League 5, and have you ever had a time where there's a video game character you like, but everybody seems to hate? Well, that's happened to me a lot, but there are also instances where I think a character receives more hate than they deserve or don't deserve hate at all, and that's what this list is about. Before I get started, I want to get one thing out of the way. If you dislike any of the characters on this list, that is absolutely fine. I have nothing wrong with that. I just think that these characters shouldn't be as hated as they are. And one more thing. This is my opinion, so please be respectful in the comments if you disagree. And one final thing. I'm basing this list off of how much hate the character receives, how much I think they don't deserve it, and what the good things about their character are. And I'm only using characters from games I've played. So now let's start the list of top 10 overhated video game characters. This entry is a bit of a cop-out, but regardless, I don't think this character deserves the hate he receives. In the Animal Crossing series, there's a huge amount of characters. Some loved, others hated. But the regular villagers usually don't receive hate. Except for one that was introduced newly, and has constantly received hate. And that is Croque. Croque, or however it's pronounced. I say Croque because he's a frog. Now, the main reason why Croque receives a lot of hate is because of a YouTuber that I really like, which is Chuggaaconroy. In his Let's Play of Animal Crossing New Leaf, Croque was one of the villagers that moved into his town, and Chugga took an immediate disliking to him. This was due to his catchphrase, which is, as if. In Animal Crossing, every character has a catchphrase, which they are programmed to say a lot of at the end of a sentence. This leads to instances of Croque saying as if at the end of a sentence, causing it to sound like Croque was taking back what he said. The big issue I have is, while I enjoyed the LP, I think Emil takes what some of the animals say a bit too seriously, which ends up leading to the massive hate towards Croque. And I do admit there are some instances in the LP where Croque is a jerk, but he actually becomes less of a jerk as the LP goes on. There were actually a number of instances where Croque was not being a jerk, and Emil took it the wrong way and got offended by it. One instance in particular during the bug off where Croque said that he's a very good bug wrangler, and Emil should watch out, he said, "Screw you!" Even in the finale, Emil couldn't find anything nice to say about Croque, and instead told him to just look after Molly. In conclusion, Croque is a bit of a jerk, but he's nowhere near as bad as people make him out to be. Plus, I kind of a bias for him because I think he looks cool because he's a ninja frog. Kind of like another video game character I like. Throughout the Legend of Zelda series, Link has had a variety of companions. Some awesome, some terrible. But one that I think is overhated is Fi. And before you say anything, yes, I know the proper pronunciation of her name is Fi, but I hate that pronunciation, so I'm calling her Fi. I briefly went over this in episode 19 of my Skyward Sword Let's Play, but I feel the need to bring it up again. Let's get the facts out first. Yes, Fi does talk a bit too much, and she does point out the painfully obvious sometimes. But I don't think she's as bad as people make her out to be. Some people claim that Fi is more annoying than Navi, and to that I have to say bullshit. While Fi does talk a lot, at least she doesn't scream in your ear every 5 seconds. And Fi gives a lot more helpful advice and tips than Navi. Plus, I hate Navi for other reasons. Despite what some people claim, Fi is actually very helpful in some instances, such as what you need to do to pass an obstacle, and she works as a great way of exposition to tell the player about the area you are in. Plus, in terms of plot, she helps Link decipher old texts. She guides Link on his journey and helps kickstart Link's adventure, and she upgrades the Goddess Sword when you reach the Three Flames. Fi does have issues as a character, but she is nowhere near as bad as Navi. At least Fi has a purpose to exist, while Navi was only made because of the Z targeting. Also, without spoiling anything, there are some heartwarming and sad moments with Fi, and she's a bit more of a relatable character than Navi. Plus, she's actually pretty cool in Hyrule Warriors where she's a playable character, and can literally turn into the Goddess Sword. Fi is my third favorite Zelda companion, and for a good reason. Back in the days of Donkey Kong Country when Rare was still owned by Nintendo, we had the Kremlings, led by King K. Rool, as villains, and they were awesome. But after Rare was bought by Microsoft, the Kremlings made very few appearances, and when Retro Studios developed Donkey Kong Country Returns, we instead got a new group of villains known as the Tiki Tribe, who are on this list. The reason why the Tiki Tribe are hated is because they were the villains of Donkey Kong Country Returns instead of the Kremlings. But does a character deserve hate just because they were used instead of another character? Well, that depends. I agree that the Tikis are nowhere near as good or as memorable as the Kremlings, but I don't think they deserve to be hated because they were used instead of the Kremlings. It's kind of like when Danny joined Game Grumps. It's not fair to hate him because he was John's replacement. He had nothing to do with John leaving, and that's the same case here. The Tikis weren't responsible for Retro Studios deciding not to use the Kremlings, so why should they be hated because they were used instead of them? Now, as characters, I do think the Tikis are very two-dimensional because they don't really have any character and their exact motives aren't explained. But as villains, they're actually a threat as they can hypnotize and possess animals. Now, I will admit that they aren't as good as the Snowmaps from Tropical Freeze, but I don't think that because they were used instead of the Kremlings is a good enough excuse to hate them. I know I've said that like 3 times now in this, but I really think that I talked a little bit about these characters in one of my response videos because the guy that made the video hates them, and my opinion hasn't changed since then. The characters I'm talking about are Team Flare. Despite their appearance and their Grunt's attitude, Team Flare is one of the biggest threats in any Pokemon game. Spoiler alert for Pokemon X and Y, they tried to destroy the entire world and only leave themselves alive. Many people claim that Team Flare are not threatening. Well, what part of destroying the world and wiping out all life except for themselves isn't threatening? The Grunts do look like a bunch of pimps, and the Swallows means that they are glam Nazis when it comes to their attitude, but this crime organization really means serious business. That's probably what Nintendo and Game Freak were going for when making the characters, to make the reveal of their plan more shocking. Now, I have seen people claim that Team Flare aren't threatening because the device it used to destroy the world, the ultimate weapon, wasn't made by them. Spoiler alert here, it was made by AZ, and not them, but how does that make them not threatening? They wouldn't be threatening if they decided to build an ultimate weapon when one already existed. If they did that instead of using the ultimate weapon, not only would it be stupid, but it would be a waste of their time, money, and resources. Also, some people claim that their plan is a rip-off of Cyrus's plan in Diamond and Pearl. Cyrus tried to create a new perfect world, while Team Flare tried to destroy the world. That's different. Also, another spoiler alert here. Their boss, Lysander, is an awesome villain. He knows what he's doing is wrong, but thinks it's the right thing to do. The only bad thing about Lysander is that they give away the fact that he's the boss of Team Flare way too easily. Team Flare are far more threatening than Team Rocket and arguably more threatening than Team Aqua and Team Magma in terms of their plans. The Smash Bros. Series uses a lot of Nintendo's most iconic characters, and some obscure characters too, but there is one character in Smash Bros. That almost everyone hates. It's R.O.B. First off, I want to say that I'm referring to the Smash Bros. R.O.B. and not the crappy peripheral that was his origin back in 1985. The fact that R.O.B. was a crappy peripheral is the reason why he's hated in Smash Bros. But this R.O.B. has barely anything to do with the peripheral other than name and appearance. He can shoot lasers, which charge over time, attack by spinning his arms around, shoot gyros at people, and has rocket thrusters that let him fly. Available now! I was good with R.O.B. in Brawl, and even better with him in Wii U and 3DS. In the Subspace Emissary in Brawl, they gave R.O.B. a bit of personality and gave him character development. When people were speculating who would be playable in Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, many people were saying that R.O.B. wouldn't return simply because they didn't like him. Not liking him is fine, but I think it's dumb to say a character won't return because you didn't like him. There was one person I got into an argument with, and he said to me, I have no idea what that robot was doing in Smash Bros. That was his entire counter-argument. I also saw this one argument that R.O.B. will return because he's had his 15 minutes of fame, which you could literally say the same thing with Mr. Game & Watch, who's also a character in Direct. And speaking of Mr. Game & Watch, no one liked him in Melee, but he returned in Brawl. That made all of the R.O.B.'s haters' arguments invalid. R.O.B is really cool as a Smash Bros. Character, so don't let the fact that he was a crappy peripheral affect your opinion on him as a fighter. Waluigi. Now, admittedly when I first saw Waluigi, I didn't like him, but over time I warmed up to him and now I really like him. But that hasn't happened with all the other players of the Mario spin-offs. People that hate Waluigi hate him because he was only created to be a doubles partner for Wario in Mario Tennis. But the reason why I, and others that like Waluigi like him, is because of how quirky he is and the fact that he's usually the comic relief character. Plus, I like Waluigi because of a lot of the internet jokes about him. The reaction to Waluigi has also affected some of his potential appearances in games. He's never appeared in a Wario Land game for some reason, which makes no sense to me, as Waluigi could be the Wario Land equivalent of Luigi. He's never appeared in a WarioWare game, which makes no sense to me either, because the cast of WarioWare is Wario's friends, and he's stuck as an assist trophy in Smash Bros. Now, some people do argue that Waluigi's not important enough to be playable, which I kind of agree with, but he could represent the Mario spin-offs since he's appeared in almost all of them. Also, I even made a potential moveset Waluigi. In games such as Mario Kart, Mario Party, and Mario Sports games, I really like playing as Waluigi. I definitely think he deserves much more love than he gets. Plus, he is a great dancer. I've seen 2 top 10 most hated video game character lists made by 2 popular channels that make countdowns with this character on the list. But while I can understand why they don't like the character, I still don't think this character should be hated so much. Bowser Jr. The 2 countdowns that I've seen describe Bowser Jr. as a spoilt brat. I can understand where they come from with this point because Bowser Jr. is spoiled rotten, but that's what makes me like him as a villain. He doesn't want to defeat Mario and kidnap Peach because of some sort of vengeance or hatred for Mario, at least in the first few games that Bowser Jr. appeared in. He does it to please his dad. This makes Bowser Jr. a sort of unique villain in terms of motives, which is one of the reasons why I like him. Also, another reason why I like Jr. is because despite the fact that he's spoiled, I've never found him annoying, and some of the boss battles against him, mainly the Galaxy 2 fights against him, have all been some of the most memorable boss fights I've experienced in the Mario series. As a character in general, I can see why some people hate Bowser Jr., but as a villain, I mean obviously that, you know, like, what I think of the character as a villain, I can't really see why. Dr. Eggman, or Robotnik, or whatever you choose to call him. I call him Eggman. Eggman receives a lot of hate over the internet because he is, quote-unquote, a pathetic villain. Now, Eggman is one of the less threatening villains in the Sonic series, and in more recent years has usually been overshadowed by other villains. But I usually like comic relief villains just as much as serious villains because comic relief villains usually do really stupid funny things, and that's what Eggman has been like in more recent years, especially since Orbot and Cubot were introduced. As for the claim that he's pathetic, that is simply not true. Eggman has had a lot of diabolical and smart plans before, such as threatening the entire planet with a laser cannon on the Ark, so that they give him the Chaos Emeralds, conquering the world with the power of the Wisps, and Metal Sonic. Enough said. If you want to see more of Eggman's great plans, then watch Reviewed 83 Rebirth's Top 10 Best Eggman/Robotnik Plans. Eggman is goofy, but he's nowhere near a pathetic villain because he has had evil plans before. Also, like with Waluigi, I like a lot of the internet jokes about Eggman, mainly in SMG4's videos. Okay, the reasons why this character receives hate makes very little sense to me, which is why this character is number 2. King Dedede. King Dedede is hated for similar reasons as Eggman. People say he's a goofy villain. That's true, but Kirby is a very goofy and innocent game, so for the first few games they needed to make a villain that would match that theme. Also, King Tiki is actually a really unique villain because his actions, such as stealing all the food in Dreamland, which is pretty evil if you ask me, are more to do with being greedy rather than being pure evil. And this takes me over to the next reason why Dedede is hated. Some people hate him because he sometimes teams up with Kirby. This reason made no sense to me because in Super Mario RPG and Super Mario, Bowser teams up with Mario, and also in Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, but in that game Bowser was unaware that he was helping Mario and Luigi. And the reason for this is because if the villain of the respective game succeeds their plan, then Bowser won't be able to rule the Mushroom Kingdom, which, with the fact that King Dedede is pretty greedy, as I mentioned earlier, it's likely to assume that in the earlier games where Dedede teamed up with Kirby, because if the villain succeeds, he can't rule Dreamland and take all of his food or whatever he wants. As for why he teams up with Kirby in Kirby's Adventure Wii, I got nothing. In conclusion, Dedede should not be such an overly hated character, as being goofy was the designer's intention, and he has reasons for teaming up with Kirby in the earlier games. Okay? Oh boy! This character is the reason why I made this list. I was originally going to make a response video to this character's haters, but I was like, you know what, there are other characters I don't think deserve so much hate, so I'll make this a countdown instead. For the previous 9 entries, I could understand, in potentially very small capacities, why the character gets a lot of hate. It was more of a way of showing why I don't think they deserve as much hate as they get. But with this character, I think doesn't deserve any of the large amount of hate that she receives. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but the most overhated video game character is Lana from Hyrule Warriors. Holy shit! Look up how many people hate Lana. Just look it up. I've seen comments on YouTube videos where people say they hate Lana without explaining why. Lana gets so much hate for 2 reasons, which, no offense, are both really stupid reasons they hate a character. The first is her design. Oh wait, sorry, I mean hair. Yes, she gets hate because her hair is blue. I've seen plenty of people in the comments call her Hatsune Miku because of it. It's a fucking color of hair. It has nothing to do with her character. It has nothing to do with the way she fights. It's a fucking hair color. You don't see me going around hating video game and anime characters because of their fucking hair color. I would bet all the money that I have that if Lana was given a natural hair color, she wouldn't be hated anywhere near as much as she is now. And her outfit looks perfectly fine to me and seems like something I would see in a main series Zelda game. Now, let's get to the other reason why Lana is hated so much. Because she's an original character created for Hyrule Warriors. Yes, you heard that right. Because she's an original character, she's hated. What's wrong with having an original character? Making an original character like Lana gave Koei Tecmo the ability to come up with ideas, weapons, and fighting styles that could have gone against one of the playable characters in Hyrule Warriors. Also, there are 3 other original characters in Hyrule Warriors: Sia, Volga, and Wizro, who are DLC characters but played a big part in the story, yet they don't receive any hate. Why do they not get any hate, but Lana does? Well, okay, I can kind of understand Sia because of the boobies. Now, how about Lana as a playable character? Because remember, there's more to her than just design and being an original character. She's actually really fun to play as. Her, Link, and Midna are my favorite characters to play as in Hyrule Warriors. Lana is very fast in both speed and attacks. Her attacks cover a wide range of areas and kill hordes of enemies very quickly, and her special attacks can also kill large amount of enemies if used at the right time, especially with the Book of Sorcery. And what about Lana's character? Because remember, there's more to a character than design and being original. I think Lana has a very likable and relatable personality. She's a strong fighter but tries to stay optimistic and beat in the middle of a battle, unless something very intense is happening or if the enemies start to get the upper hand. I'll try not to spoil Hyrule Warriors, but if you pay attention to Lana's character instead of her fucking design, you'll really relate with her throughout the story. Lana is a good character. Don't let a fucking design and being original affect your view of a character. I'm the Metal Blade 5, and Lana does not deserve any hate she gets.